This is your Lake of the Ozarks fishing report for the upper Osage of Lake of the Ozarks. This report's courtesy of Joe's Lake Ozark Guide Service. Today is May 11th, 2017. Doing a video a little bit differently this week. Some storms kind of forced us in off the water. Plus, I want to show you a couple things on my laptop here on a map to show you some spawning pockets and where these fish are going to pull out to after they spawn. So, but basically, I've been on the water the last 3 days, and the lake level is at 658.5, which is 1 foot and 1.5 feet below full. The water color, because of all the floods we've had here, it's dirty in the upper lake area. Main river channel is very dirty. You can see that about 3-4 inches. You get back into the coves and the creeks, it gets clearer the farther you go back into the cove or the creek. So you start in the very back of the creek, that's going to be your clearest water, because what's going to happen as they start pulling the lake down at Bagnell Dam, it pulls all the mud out of the creeks and into the main channel, and it leaves that clear water back in behind in the back of the creek. So it's going to take some time for these creeks to clear, and then a lot more time for the main lake to clear, because Truman Lake was 20 foot, 25 foot higher than their normal pool. So it's going to take a while to get Truman Lake back down to where they want to keep it for the summer, which means the main river channel in the upper lake area is probably going to stay pretty dirty for a while, but the creeks will stay definitely a lot clearer. Water temperature's been anywhere from 65 up to about 70. So in the upper lake area, most of our fish are in post-spawn mode. There are still a few spawners. I did catch some spawners this week, but not many as we were catching when I did the last report. Most fish we're catching are pre-spawn. They've got the skinny bellies. They're tired, they're wore out, or we're catching some males. On the near the some non-keeper males close to where these bass would spawn. You can't see the beds. The water's too dirty, but we are still catching some fish around beds. But I did catch a couple of nice fish yesterday that still had big bellies on them, but they were right where they would normally spawn. So let me show you what we're catching them on. Another thing that's kind of going on right now, it's just kind of starting as a shad spawn. So as soon as these fish get finished spawning here this week, I would think next week, when the water temperature gets around 70 degrees, the shad are going to spawn, which means they're going to be up close to the bank. So let me show you what we've been doing catching fish. Of course, I like to throw a jig. I don't have one in front of me here on the table, but I've been throwing that zapper jig with a pocket crawl trailer on the back of it, staying with a darkish kind of color. The one I use is kind of a dark green, black, brown color. Black and blue is a good choice. Straight black's a good choice. But you want to use a crawl flapper that creates little vibrations, what you want to do. Because with the water dirty, they're no longer feeding strictly by sight. They're going to need to use those other senses in the dirty water, so they're going to really key on the vibration of the bait and smell. You want to use your scents too that you spray on your baits. Spinnerbait's a good choice. If you throw a spinnerbait right now, make sure it has the big round blade. The Colorado blade. I think this is an Indiana blade, but big round blade. I'm using a chartreuse color, and by all means, always use your trailer hook on your spinnerbaits and buzz baits when you're doing that. Square bill crankbait is very good right now. Fishing that around cover, logs, laydowns, and so forth. Anytime the water gets real dirty like this, these fish, I don't think they suspend. I think they move right in close to objects, docks, rocks, logs, stuff like that. So you can throw your square bill, but you got to be really precise on your cast and throw it right to where you think they're going to be next to that log, because they're not going to chase the bait very far because they can't see it. They can maybe feel it coming, but you got to get it right up on them. And then if you can, it kind of surprises them. You'll usually catch a fish doing that. But most of the fish I'm catching right now are on a bottom bouncing type bait, like a jig, worm, something of that sort. And then you can also still catch some, even in dirty water, in the straight tail worm. I've just been rigging that on a shaky head, and this is a black with a little blue tail. It's just something dark that shows the silhouette in the water. If you do find some clear water, normally we would be catching fish on top waters right now. There are spooks, buzz baits. The bait I like to use on post spawn and when they're spawning is a pop R type bait. This one's kind of a bluegill color, because we're going to have a bluegill spawn coming on here really quick too. And if you've been fishing close to the bank for spawning bed, you probably had that subtle peck type bite. with the bluegill up close to the bank. So I always try to use a popper right now that'll kind of more resemble a bluegill. That's what that green back, orange belly will have. As we move into the summer, then I'll move my popper from a bluegill color to just a bone white shed color. And then you can also throw, the big worms, the big long worms, Texas rig, the big power worms. This I think this is a zoom worm, and you can go from there. But that's kind of the baits we're using right now. We're catching these spawners in the spawning pockets. With the shad spawn getting ready to start, you can catch him on these channel banks up close to the bank. And then as your day moves on in the afternoon or late morning, you can go back out to some of these secondary points. With the dam operators at Bagnell Dam pulling water, I'd fish every point that I could see. Pick me an area, fish it thoroughly, and fish every point on there, because there's probably going to be current on that point, including the creeks. All right, let me move my camera around here and see if I can get it set up on a map I've got shown here, and then I'll try to show you what we're actually looking for as far as spawning pockets and non-spawning pockets. All right, this is a creek in the upper lake area, and what I have for you up here right now is this creek, and I'll identify some stuff for you. This is a creek channel bank. I can tell it because it has a dotted line creek channel identified here, but even if it didn't have the dotted line creek channel identified right there, you'll notice the contour lines on this side of the creek are a lot closer, tighter bunched together than the contour lines on this side. This would be the flat side, this would be the steeper side. You can also tell when you're out in the boat sitting out here in the middle of this creek, you can look up at the bank either way. This side bank over here is going to look a lot steeper. This bank over here is going to be a lot flatter down by the water, and that's stuff you want to pay attention to. And as you get over here, you notice that when the lines get real close together here again, that's where the creek channel comes in, and it swings right into that. So it's kind of a channel swing as it swings right into that, next to that bank. Now, spawning pockets. These are obvious spawning pockets right here. There's one right there. There's another one right there. Bass are going to move back into these pockets. They're going to spawn. As long as they have enough water depth in there, they'll spawn. They'll spawn in pockets like these. But they will also spawn in very subtle pockets that look like this right here. These up here, those there, even something as subtle as like that. They'll even find little flat areas or pocket areas out here on these secondary points to spawn. So they'll kind of spawn a little bit everywhere. And I'm not saying they don't spawn over here. You'll also catch spawners over there. I'm just trying to simplify things for you as you look at the map. What we do in the spawning areas right now, if I'm fishing right now, I'll probably start fish this spawning pocket right here, fish it in and out, and then I'll go back out and fish these areas right here. I'll catch spawners most likely back in here. Pre-spawn, we were catching fish out here on these rounded points. Now we're looking for post-spawn fish. After these fish spawn, they're going to pull right back out here onto these same secondary points they were on before. But here's one of the things you want to look for. If you were catching fish back in this pocket that were spawning back in this pocket, they're going to move out, but they're probably going to stop underneath these docks right here and just kind of hang out. So this is where you want to use your pitching and flipping techniques to flip every one of those little gaps, holes, little flotation pieces right by the bank and so forth. You want to pitch these little docks, and that's what these little yellow things are right there on this map. Those are docks. So that kind of gives you an idea what a spawning pocket is. So I was talking about the shad spawn. The shad will spawn right up close to the bank. So I'll use these lures like the square bill, buzz baits, spinner baits, and baits like that right close to the bank. And then when the shad spawn's over, usually it'll happen the first hour and a half in the morning. If it's cloudy, it might last a little longer because the shad are going to spawn at night. They love to spawn close to the bank, but they'll spawn on these dock runways and back corners of these docks. And then as the sun gets up, say 9 or 10 o'clock, then we'll move back out here and fish these secondary points. And that's where you can fish these with your deeper diving crankbaits. You can throw these with your bigger Texas rig worms. Now, let me back this map out a little bit. One of the things I do when I go fish a creek, I like to take a lot of guesswork out of stuff. I like to just draw an imaginary line right across the mouth of that creek. I hope you can see that you can see that right there. And that where that pencil is, that's going to kind of act as the dam, and so that creek will actually act as its own little lake. So what I'll do is I'll just put that pencil across there in my line, or draw an imaginary line across there in my mind, and that's where the dam is. This section here might be the lower end of this little lake. This might be the upper end. So the fish in the upper end Water's going to warm up a little bit quicker up here than it might warm up down here. Okay, so that's just kind of what I do. It kind of helps me simplify stuff so I'm not just running all over the place, because I could spend a half a day fishing this whole creek, or even a full day fishing this whole creek if I really choose to. And again, you've got more spawning pockets back here and so forth. And then as we get out into the summer, some of these fish will stay along these creek channels, like this creek channel I have drawn back here. Some fish will stay on this creek channel year round. Same way over here, they'll stay on this creek channel over here year round. Other fish, they will pull out to some of these bluff points out in here and some of these deeper spots right out in here underneath these docks and brush piles. So it just kind of gives you an idea of where these fish are at and what they're doing and where they're going. Right now, they've been spawning in these pockets. It's where we've been catching them. And right now they're in the process of pulling right back out onto these secondary and these main lake points. And then they're going to hang out there most of the summer until we get to fall and you see that big shad migration back into these flat areas on these creeks, and then they'll just kind of move right back out, or they'll move off this creek channel, move right over the flat side. It's what they'll do in the fall. But we'll talk about that more when we get into the seasons right now. But right now we're targeting still a few spawners, and we're pulling back out on these secondary points. That's a secondary point of this pocket. Here's another secondary point of that pocket. Same way here, same way there. And when we've got these big rounded secondary points, there's going to be one key or two key spots on that point that you want to focus on and really, target. So we'll look for these fish in these spawning pockets, and then we'll also look for them, the ones that are pulled back out onto these secondary points. And you can make a whole day of that pattern right there. Of course, lake level, water color is going to condition also. Will also determine where they're going to be located. But that's kind of where they're going to be located right now. So, thanks for watching these videos. I hope you like this one with a little bit of a map study here, kind of give you an idea of what's going on, so I'm not sitting on my boat. And I'll try to do another report here in another couple weeks. This report's courtesy of Joe's Lake Ozark Guide Service. Thanks for watching.